Right now, an unmanned Iranian drone is circling over the Persian Gulf. This is not speculation. This is happening now. And what this drone represents has fundamentally changed the strategic calculus of U.S. air defense. Over 12 days in June 2025, Iran conducted a live fire test that wiped out a quarter of America's THAAD interceptor stockpile. A quarter. In less than 2 weeks. Satellite imagery doesn't lie. The numbers don't lie. And they tell you something uncomfortable. American air defense superiority. That story of impenetrable layered protection that's been the foundation of military strategy for decades just hit a wall. What you're about to see will change how you understand the balance of modern military power. To understand why U.S. air defense is now vulnerable in ways no one predicted, you need to know 3 drone systems Iran unveiled in 2025. We're not talking about commercially adapted quadcopters. We're talking about next-generation stealth platforms built specifically to exploit gaps in American defense systems. First, the Shahed 161. It's a flying wing drone, unveiled publicly on November 11, 2025, at Tehran's National Aerospace Park. A flying wing, that's the key. The flying wing design cuts radar cross-section dramatically. Same principle that made the F-117 Nighthawk essentially invisible to Soviet radars during Desert Storm. The Shahed 161 incorporates radar-absorbing materials into its structure. When a radar sweeps the sky, it's hunting for reflections. A flat, angled surface bounces energy straight back to the receiver. A flying wing coated with absorbing materials? It soaks that energy up. What gets back to the radar operator is weak, fuzzy, easy to mistake for noise or a bird. That's the first Iranian advantage. You basically can't see it. Second system, the Hadid 110, a high-speed kamikaze drone, unveiled March 3, 2025. While the Shahed 161 handles long-range missions and saturation tactics, the Hadid 110 is the swarm's precision strike. Think of it as the spearhead. Fast, heavily armed, and designed to work alongside hundreds of other drones to punch through point defenses. Third, the JS-311, a jet-powered reconnaissance and naval strike drone, also announced March 3rd. It extends Iranian swarm reach into the maritime domain. U.S. Navy ships, which have operated freely in the Persian Gulf for decades, now face drones that launch from shore, navigate independently, and saturate ship defenses like the Phalanx CIWS. 3 systems, each built for a different role in a coordinated swarm, all unveiled across 8 months in 2025. This wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. Iran was advertising its strength, gauging reactions, and building up to what happened in June. Here's the real danger. It's not just the stealth tech. It's what these drones do to your decision-making window. Think of air defense like a bouncer at the door. He sees someone coming from far away, figures out if they're a threat, decides whether to stop them, and acts before they get inside. Works great when people show up one at a time, walking straight toward the door. But what if 200 people flood out of side alleys you didn't even know existed? What if half of them look exactly like VIPs? That's what these stealth drones do. They squeeze your reaction time from 15 minutes down to 12. And suddenly, you're making 200 decisions instead of 1. Picture this. A Shahed 161 launches from inland Iran. Because of its flying wing design and radar-absorbing coating, long-range radars don't pick it up until it's much closer than a conventional plane or missile. By the time you detect it, it's already in a tight interception window. Now multiply that by 200 drones launched simultaneously from different locations. The math shifts. Instead of 10 to 15 minutes to spot, decide, and shoot, you've got 10 to 12 minutes. And in those 12 minutes, you're not tracking one target. You're tracking overlapping waves, some coming in low to beat your horizon radars, some using crazy flight patterns to throw off your targeting, and you're forced to pick and choose. Do you shoot this one? Or do you let it through because you're running low on missiles? Let me give you a historical parallel that should stick with you. The Maginot Line, France, 1930s. After the wreckage of World War I, France built an enormous wall of concrete and steel to make any invader hesitate. Deep bunkers, artillery covering every mile of border, miles of tunnels linking everything together. It was engineering at its finest, and completely worthless. Why? Because France built it to stop German tanks rolling straight at them, and Germany just went around it, through Belgium. The most expensive fortress on Earth became useless in 2 days. May 1940, German forces walked around the Maginot Line by cutting through Belgium. The French defenses, designed for one specific threat, became obsolete overnight. Fixed fortifications versus mobile armies. The Maginot Line wasn't broken by better tech. It was broken by a strategy that exploited its blind spot. The US layered air defense, built to stop ballistic missiles and fighter jets, is facing the same problem. THAAD and SM-3 were optimized for intercepting fast, high-altitude ballistic missiles. They're excellent at that. But low-altitude stealth drones hitting in massive waves? That was never what these systems were designed to handle. And like the Maginot Line, the systems work fine. They just weren't built for the war that showed up. But showing off drones at a military parade is one thing. Using them to crack a superpower's defenses? That happened in June 2025. And when the numbers got declassified, defense analysts worldwide went silent. From mid-June to late June 2025, Iran and Israel fought a 12-day war that became the biggest real-world test of swarm tactics ever recorded. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a simulation. This was actual combat. And it changed everything. Iran fired over 550 ballistic missiles and more than 1,000 kamikaze drones at Israeli targets. 1,500 projectiles in 12 days. That's roughly 130 launches a day. Almost 6 per hour, non-stop, for 2 weeks straight. Israeli defenses, backed by US THAAD and SM-3 systems in the region, were overwhelmed. The numbers tell the story. More than 150 THAAD interceptors got burned through in 12 days. That's about 25% of America's total THAAD stockpile. A quarter, in less than 2 weeks. Plus roughly 80 SM-3 missiles got used up, draining regional supplies. Here's the critical part. Restocking. Production timelines show it takes about 18 months to replace what Iran burned through in June 2025. 18 months. That means from June 2025 to December 2026, US missile defense is running on empty. You're fighting with one hand tied, and every adversary on the planet knows it. Let's talk about the economics. Imagine a poker game. Your opponent bets $20. You have to throw in $2,000 to see what he's holding, and he keeps doing this forever. You've got limited money. He's got endless stacks of $20 chips. How long before you're broke? That's the math of modern air defense. A THAAD interceptor costs $2 million. An Iranian Shahed drone costs $20,000. That's a 100-to-1 difference. Iran launches 100 cheap drones for $2 million. America spends $2 million to shoot down one drone. You're burning million-dollar bills to stop $10,000 threats. Now throw in overlapping drone waves that force you to fire 2 or 3 missiles at every volley, and the math gets worse. Much worse. It's unsustainable. Iran knows it. In June 2025, Iran didn't just send random volleys. They launched coordinated waves designed specifically to drain your missiles. Wave 1. Cheap drones to make you burn interceptors. Wave 2. Ballistic missiles mixed with more drones to confuse your operators. Wave 3. Precision strikes at critical targets while defenses are weakened. It's textbook saturation strategy, but executed with a precision most analysts didn't expect. The Center for a New American Security put out an assessment after June. Quote, US missile defense systems weren't built for saturation attacks this big. Think about that. Not built for saturation. The systems work. They shoot down missiles, they destroy drones, but they work within limits that assume a certain number of threats. Go beyond that, and the system doesn't explode. It just gets progressively worse. You drop from intercepting 90% of targets to 80%, then 70%. And every percentage you lose means critical targets are now undefended. CNAS identified 3 main problems. First, no dedicated counter-drone systems. The AD and SM-3 are built for ballistic missiles. They can hit drones, but that's a side job, not what they're designed for. Second, not enough interceptor stockpiles. When missiles cost millions and take months to build, you can't replace them fast. Third, no modern short-range air defense. Patriot and THAAD handle medium and long-range threats. Low-flying drone swarms? You need close-range guns, lasers, or cheap interceptors. Those exist, just haven't been rolled out everywhere. Here's the deeper issue June revealed. Decision windows don't just shrink. They pile on top of each other. It's like being a surgeon in the middle of emergency surgery when 3 more patients wheel in simultaneously. And you've got to keep operating. You can't finish the first one before the next one starts. You're forced to decide right now. Who has the best chance? Who can you save? Who don't you make it in time for? Air defense officers faced exactly this in June 2025. They weren't picking which targets to shoot. They were deciding which targets to let through. This isn't defense. It's triage. And the US military hasn't dealt with this kind of scenario since Vietnam. Shifting from stop everything to accept some losses is a massive strategic change. And it happened silently, over 12 days in June 2025. That was June 2025. But Iran didn't stop. February 2026 showed they're still refining their tactics. In February 2026, the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group was in the Persian Gulf. The classified details stay classified, but open reports show the strike group tracked coordinated Iranian drone launches over 72 hours. This wasn't combat. It was a stress test. Iran was measuring how fast we respond, where we put interceptors, how our radars track targets. They were collecting information. And that tells you something important. Iran isn't treating swarms as a one-time tactic. It's a long-term strategy they keep refining by testing against real US targets. Every incident from March 2025 revelations, November announcements, the June war, to February 2026's data. Iran is building a model of how US defenses react under pressure. With each test, they adjust timing, flight paths, and swarm coordination to hit newly discovered weak spots. This is the core problem facing America right now. In 2026, Congress budgeted $7.5 billion for counter-drone systems. $7.5 billion. Sounds big until you look at what it actually gets you. First, research and development for high-energy lasers and microwave weapons. Promising tech. Lasers could theoretically engage drones for a few bucks in electricity instead of millions for a missile. But lasers have real problems. Weather, power, targeting complexity. They're not ready for widespread combat today. Second, faster production of existing missiles. That refills THAAD and SM-3 supplies, but doesn't fix the core cost problem. You're still burning millions to stop thousands of threats. Third, deploying short-range systems. That's key. CRAM guns and close defense platforms can kill low-flying drones for way less than THAAD or SM-3. But setting them up takes time. You can't just plop CRAM guns on a base and expect everything to work. You need new software, new communication protocols, personnel training. That takes years. The vulnerabilities exposed in June 2025 and tested in February 2026 are still exploitable. That's what's scary. Imagine you watch an amateur knock out the heavyweight champion. The whole thing's recorded. You analyze every movement. You figure out exactly which punches worked. Now you can teach that combination to any fighter worldwide. That's what just happened. China, Russia, North Korea, every power with drones is watching the June 2025 footage. Taking notes. The tactic isn't a secret, it's copyable, it's cheap. China's already got massive drone stockpiles. Russia's shown swarm tactics across multiple fronts. North Korea makes drones by the thousands. If these countries copy Iran's playbook, America faces wars everywhere. Korea, South China Sea, the Baltic, with drone swarms crushing air defenses. And the economics mean smaller nations can keep launching waves longer than America can shoot missiles. Let me explain the doctrine change happening quietly now. For decades, American air defense was about prevention. Stop threats before they hit targets. That needs 95% plus interception. But with 1,500 threats in 12 days and missiles running low, prevention dies. You shift to damage control. Some threats get through. You pick what to protect and accept losses elsewhere. It's acceptable loss math. And it flips defense strategy upside down. Instead of asking, how do we stop everything? You ask, how much can we take and still operate? This is poker, not chess. You're gambling probabilities, not eliminating threats. And it demands different thinking and different training. Officers need to accept making choices that get people killed and infrastructure destroyed. AI systems get plugged in to auto-pick targets under extreme time pressure. And resilience spreading assets around, having backups, hardening key targets becomes as important as shooting things down. Here's the hard truth nobody wants to say. $7.5 billion buys equipment. It doesn't buy new doctrine. It's like buying a race car versus learning to drive like a pro racer. Buy the car in one day. Learn the skill? Years of training, thousands of laps, total mental overhaul. Equipment is simple. Sign contracts, fund factories, put systems on bases. Changing how you actually fight? That demands rethinking how war works from the ground up. And nobody does that fast. You need to retrain commanders in new decision-making. You need different military branches actually working together instead of separately. You need political leadership willing to admit that perfect defense against certain threats isn't possible anymore. And that change doesn't happen in one budget year. It takes generations of military people rotating through. Iran spent roughly $25 billion on defense, less than 4% of what America spends, and found an opening. They exploited it in June 2025. That's just reality. So what happens next? You've seen exactly how this played out. The June 2025 war wasn't just another regional conflict. It was the moment when the story of American air defense invincibility died. In hard numbers nobody can argue with. 1/4 of Thaad stockpiles. Gone in 12 days. By a country spending less than 4% what America spends on defense. Not because drones were used in combat for the first time, but because it was the first full-scale test showing how organized swarms can systematically chew through a superpower's defenses, and real combat data proved the tactic works. Iran didn't need to win militarily. They just needed to force America to burn through 1/4 of its best missiles, creating an 18-month shortage that told every enemy watching, the window is open. Right now. Defense today isn't about blocking everything. It's about surviving the damage while you still can operate. It's not just a shift in tactics. It's a complete rethinking of strategy that will shape global warfare for decades. February 2026 wasn't a fluke. It shows Iran keeps refining the approach. They're testing, learning, improving. And not alone. They're coordinating with regional players, probably getting technical help from China and Russia, and definitely sharing data with allies. Spread of these tactics is locked in. If Iran can do it, others will. Once a tactic gets validated with real combat data, other powers stop hesitating to copy it. You're not guessing anymore. You know it works because you watched it work in June 2025. It's documented in open intelligence reports and CNS studies any analyst in the world can access. You're watching a historical cycle that always repeats. Every perfect defense eventually cracks. The Maginot Line got bypassed because Germany just went around it. Medieval castles became useless when cannons showed up. Battleships ruled the ocean until fighter planes proved armor didn't matter. Today, American layered air defense built for ballistic missiles and fighter jets is running into drone swarms that cost 1% of the missiles you fire at them. This isn't bad engineering. It's just how war works. Defenses always prepare for the last war, not the next one. And there's always a dangerous gap while strategy, money, and production catch up. We're in that gap right now. America will eventually close it. The question is when, how much money, and which enemies attack while the door's still open. Based on June 2025 and production schedules, that window stays open through 2026, 12 months more, probably longer. For members, I lay out exactly what comes next. The real timelines Washington and Beijing are using right now. Escalation scenarios nobody's discussing publicly yet. How China is copying Iran's playbook for Taiwan, using the same swarm math against US naval defenses in the Pacific. How Russia is building drone swarm tactics into Black Sea strategy after June 2025. Which critical US infrastructure stays wide open to coordinated drone attacks, even after Congress spent $7.5 billion. If you're paying attention because you see these shifts reshape markets, politics, and regional conflict for years, that deep analysis is available to members. Even publicly available information tells the whole story. In 12 days in June 2025, Iran proved you don't need better technology to break a superpower's defenses. You need better tactics and the guts to exploit the cost difference. 1,500 waves of attacks. 25% of THAAD missiles gone. An 18-month shortage that's still being refilled right now. That's the future. Defense isn't about stopping everything anymore. It's about accepting losses, choosing what matters, and keeping things running while you're getting pounded. If you thought having better tech guaranteed safety, June 2025 showed you wrong. Air defense as an unbreakable wall? Done. Welcome to Swarm Wars, where winning means surviving longer than the other guy, not stopping everything.